This is Ed, as you can see. Well, maybe you don't know, but that's San Diego downtown. That's a view taken from a helicopter. I did not shoot the picture. It was supplied to me by the Economic Development Corporation of San Diego. And the convention center is right in the middle in the background there. And the harbor side is in the tourist district, of course, with the convention center and the hotel stretching back to the right there, as you could see. And in the foreground is man-made years ago, but at no taxpayer expense. It was donated from a group of rich guys. And this is a recreational area and a concert venue. And during the summer times, it's every night there's uh, live music. And it's just a beautiful area. And our special guest today is from Dublin, and Joseph McGuire, author of Face Facts and a longtime expert in facial recognition. Now, as you look at my face here against that beautiful background and my color coordinated shirt here, I'm trying to build a psychologically safe environment. I think I've done it. What do you think?
You blend in perfectly, Ed.
Okay, so now how do we talk about communicating? Because today's show is dedicated to you, my friend. As editor of the Global Business News media, um, uh, I've grown, enhanced the value of our typical Communicator of the Year award, which goes to one company or person. There's so many people who are doing really good things now that I can't do that anymore. So I'm starting now in January, underway already, is the series of one-on-one interviews like this for about 30 minutes and to bring focus on you and your specific work. So congratulations, Joseph McGuire, Communicator Award. And one of the reasons, just one of the reasons that I thought you were extremely worthy of that, and I want to promote it through this program. Not that you need my PR, you've got plenty, but the concept here is the show that you were on where you displayed the Golden
Golden
Bridge
Bridge. Yep.
as I think we were talking about exit ramps from difficult situations. And that's like, man, that's just what the world needs today. Look what's going on in the headlines just today. It's just disturbing, and I want to be hopeful.
Mhm.
So the Golden Bridge is your product, not mine, but it was so well portrayed during that program where we had a small panel talking about business issues and trauma and recovery and people looking for a way out of this kind of a thing. Did you have that in mind when you developed that Golden Bridge idea?
I was thinking of it initially in terms of negotiation, especially, but the more I think about it, the broader the application I see for it, because we can apply it. The original idea comes from the ancient Chinese classic called The Art of War by the General Sun Tzu. And the phrase he used was um, always provide a golden bridge for your enemies to retreat over. And that sounds obviously it was the art of war, so that's to do with martial adventures or affairs and hostility and all of that. But if we apply it in terms of a negotiation, negotiations can be very tense on occasion. And it's not unusual for one or other party in a negotiation to become hostile. And whether we're talking about a business negotiation or a domestic negotiation, because marital breakdown, etc., um, hostilities can arise, emotions can be heightened, people can be angered, etc., etc. And when we allow ourselves, and I'm deliberately using that word, when we allow ourselves to step back from that heightened emotion, we can create that golden bridge. And it's not simply, I'm no longer simply seeing it in terms of somebody retreating, but creating a space where we can settle down. Okay, this is what's actually happening. This is why we're here. This is what we need. And again, I'm using the term we rather than me. So
Yeah. So this is a psychologically safe place idea.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. Now we see that phrase. I didn't invent that phrase. I think Heather did,
Mhm.
our friend Heather.
Yeah.
And she referred it to the world of mobility and transfer, big companies transferring talent, um, and the accompanying family or spouse is almost an afterthought. Um, and that era, I'm speaking as an outsider but industry veteran, that is the kiss of death to in many international assignments because the family is disrupted and the employee more often than not will quit and costing the company money big time and all the work that the individual invested in that community, even though the trauma of being the outsider, uh, the expat comes into a community and they may have golden handcuffs and all that, but it's hard to make friends. Now you can within the expat community, but and so that's what people do. That's the fallback. But in terms of getting to know the local culture and the local people and experiencing that life, what do you think? I'm talking too much here.
No, that's fine. It's obviously a huge issue. And one of the I've been reflecting on Benjamin Franklin quite a bit recently, and one of probably the most famous quote attributed to Benjamin Franklin is "fail to prepare, prepare to fail." And preparation in that scenario is essential, the one you've described, where there's mobility, there's people being transferred from one country to another, family and adjustment to culture, etc. And very often what happens is the company decides this is what they need, but there isn't enough attention given to the family and what the family needs. And I'm not simply talking about the family unit, but there should be a profile done of each of the individuals in the family and a profile of the family as a whole. And then in the context of what's their culture, what's their setting, what are they accustomed to, and how do we help them adjust? And it's not simply a mechanical or transactional process. It has to be in the context, again, of their well-being, nurturing the corporation or the organization so that they fit as seamlessly as possible into the situation, into the new situation, the new culture, so that they are not just happy, but they're also productive. Because obviously that's primarily what the company is interested in. And let's be very real about that. But the happier they are, the more productive they're likely to be, the more constructive they are in terms of how they engage with the company. And I'm just going back to the idea of the golden bridge. I'm thinking in terms of the Golden Bridge more and more in the context of kindness and civility. And I've just been reading some research recently where the lack of civility in the US, the lack of civility in the workplace in the US is costing an estimated $2 billion per day in terms of lack of productivity, absenteeism, presenteeism, people leaving because they're unhappy. And that's also part of that idea of the mobility and people not being properly prepared to fit into the new environment.
Oh, it's a dilemma for the company. The company is
Yeah.
losing face, losing potential customer development. There's that is probably hard to measure until something bad happens, but this idea of presenteeism means you're there, but you're not there. And so, the C-suite generally are pretty intelligent people. They know what's going on, but they don't know really what to do with it.
Unfortunately, that happens too frequently. And so often I mean, there's so many factors involved there. So often the C-suite are so busy with what they're doing that they're not, or the key people are not always conscious of what's happening down the chain. And they may not even have the time, and they may subordinate it on occasion to others who sometimes will deal with it very effectively and are very tuned in, and sometimes won't. So
So there's the business opportunity to figure out how to deal with that.
yeah, I would say there are massive business opportunities. You mentioned our friend Heather there recently is an organizational psychologist. She's obviously a perfect person to be brought in. Somebody like Heather would be a perfect person to be brought into that. We have other people in the community. We obviously Ken Lloyd, Paul Falcone, Stephen Howard, and others who can contribute hugely in terms of giving absolute clarity to what's required, not just in terms of as it were, the narrow company need, the company requirement, but how to fit it all together. And certainly the companies, like I mentioned that figure of 2 billion per day, a loss of 2 billion. Like companies that don't adapt and don't take these ideas on board are going to suffer, especially with the increased mechanization and digitization that's happening in so many workplaces, where people are not just being replaced, but people are feeling scared that they're going to be replaced. And that's impacting on productivity. We're seeing that in terms of absenteeism. We're seeing it in terms of presenteeism. We're seeing it and the presenteeism doesn't just mean being physically present and not particularly performing. It often means being present and being depressed and performing particularly badly. Not just doing the minimum, but performing badly, which is obviously going to hit the bottom line of the company. So there are multiple factors there, but there are certainly people who can provide just very, very practical and very effective solutions.
So, are you working on a new book?
I am, and it's a totally different topic. Uh, the new book is focused on helping women who are in relationships with men. And that's a lot of that work has just come to me organically because I've had so many female friends over the years who've come to me after the fact of having been badly let down or in some cases horrendously treated by a man or multiple men. And to me, men are a lot of my women friends won't agree with me on this, but to me, men are simple creatures, basically pretty easy to read, and I can help women very quickly identify both the red and the green flags and give them strategies when they're dating, whether it's online or in person, to help uncover the real character, the real intention, and the real motivations of the guy, so that they can they can understand exactly who they're dealing with very quickly and very clearly. And if he's the wrong guy, they can just sever the cord very quickly and prevent a lot of pain.
Whew, good luck.
Yeah, it's a
Mm,
huge area, unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. So, what is your take on the uh, business decisions? I'm changing the subject a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I was reading a post just this morning, a little while ago, from Andrew Elliman in the UK,
Mhm.
uh, who's a past award winner of the Communicator award because of his dynamic physical and mental approach to things, including self-sacrifice and big efforts of climbing Mount Everest not once but twice, and then trying to swim the English Channel and doing all kinds of things. This morning's post was about something simple but meaningful, and struck a chord, and that is he was waiting in the financial district in London for an 8:30 appointment. He arrived half hour early. Receptionist offered free coffee, and it was really good. And he was sitting there watching people arrive at work, and they're all carrying Starbucks or some other package of food and goods that they bought. So why wouldn't they just come in and get the freebie? And so the idea of free, does it have value? In the, well, certainly it does for some people, but a lot of people say, well, I don't care about spending $5 here or there and getting a coffee and a donut or something. So what do you think of free? And now I have the same issue as you know, of how do you do things? How do you get customers involved? How do you get people to become customers? Well, you offer something as a trial, as a goodwill. And there's nothing wrong with that. I do it. But am I doing it too much? And so the article by by Andrew Elliman was just right on time. And how does that communicate? We're talking about communicating,
Mhm.
and so I'm stretching the thing a little bit here, but
Sure.
but that's an interesting topic, and probably has no answer today.
Yeah, I don't know that it has a simple answer or a single answer. I must check it out actually because Andrew is certainly very, very impressive in how he thinks and what he does. But part of it, I think, is that people are by and large creatures of habit. We do what we do because that's what we do, and people get into that habit, or even you could call it a ritual of buying their coffee on the way into work, and maybe they meet a colleague on the way. There could be all sorts of different elements to it. But I have both my daughters here in Dublin work for major tech companies, and they get a lot of perks like that: free coffee, free meals, free lunch, etc. They're snack machines. They can go and just help themselves, etc. And it's it's like it's wonderful, and it means certainly in their cases they spend less on going to those other external places. But it's also a psychological boost because it helps to foster a sense of belonging that we are taking care of you. The company are taking care of you. And that's like if you like, the nonverbal communication element of it. And that there is a value in that. But there's also another element that perhaps we don't talk about enough is that perks like that are no longer enough for younger people. And it's the communication gap that's often the missing piece because what Gen Z, as we're calling them, or Gen X, are looking for is not just those perks, but they're looking for a sense of autonomy. They want to feel trusted. They want to feel respected. They're not always, unfortunately, they're not always emotionally prepared for the realities of the workplace, but there's a need for business leaders to communicate with clarity about what you're here for, why you're of value, and to draw out the best of people so that they're not simply performing at as it were, a functional level, but that they're really contributing to the company. And again, it's the companies who are most foresighted, who do communicate actively and clearly and effectively and actually listen, because that's one of the other areas that probably doesn't happen enough for management senior leaders to do more listening, not to be told what they should be doing, but to hear where people are actually at and what's affecting them. So
So
there's,
in large companies, it's always pushed down to the immediate supervisor.
yeah. And
They're not trained.
unfortunately, you're absolutely right, Ed. So many people who come into management roles at whatever level are not trained to be managers. And they're like the swan paddling frantically, looking all serene on the surface. But they're often very much out of their depth. and they've lost the camaraderie they had at the previous level. And they're often resented by people they've left behind. So there's often a sense of isolation there. So there's a lot of work needs to be done in that space.
Can those supervisors at that level be replaced by a humanoid?
It'll vary from industry to industry, but in some cases, probably yes, and probably are being replaced.
Because of that problem. You know, what there's no emotion, there's take care of people.
Yeah.
Just do it. This is how to do it.
Hmm.
And you don't have to get gushy. There's no emotions involved. Just
Yeah.
when that issue comes up, the response is, like a machine, da da da, and it spits out, do this, do that, try this. It doesn't work, try plan B. And it's like machine oriented. It's just like I was talking to Gemini this morning on Google about customer service and customer pain points. And that's the topic of a show I'm doing with Ron Cooper this Thursday. So I was doing research. And I said, well, I might as well ask Gemini. And man, I asked the question and all this stuff comes out.
Hmm.
I mean, none of it is like uh, 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 brain twister. It's sort of
Yeah.
like it just spits out in like an encyclopedia Britannica
Yeah.
of information, but very well organized and easy to read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I just love that. It was terrific. I copied, pasted it into the agenda thing, and now I have all my work done. I just have to execute the program on Thursday. But Ron, my client, my public relations client, is trying to reach the audience within business. Of course, we all are. Reach the audience who I've been fortunate to develop over the years with good quality program like this. But for another purpose now, Ron's purpose is to develop some business uh, connections within my audience now.
Hmm.
And I'm not divulging any secrets here. It's just he says, okay, who in your audience should I be talking to? And I said, well, that's a good question. And so these are my typical audiences according to LinkedIn and according to Google Analytics. And so what do they need, Ron, that you can deliver? And so now he's come up with a plan about business culture.
Yeah.
And that's how all that developed. And so now we're going to deliver it. And so it's interesting. I look forward to that program. But here's the idea of free, though. You and I are entrepreneurs. We know what people want, and it's easy for us to say, well, hire me, and I'm certainly going to help you. But you got to know and trust me that I can deliver something. So I'm going to give you something free first and with no obligation other than mental obligation, I guess.
Hmm.
That's the honest thing. It's mental. A connection, a communications device, trust building, rapport building. The words go on, and I'm like a Gemini myself here.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're old enough to remember the phrase, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And ultimately, when it comes down to business, there's nothing comes for free. There's always something comes at a cost. And in my particular space over the last number of years has been focused on executive interviews. And I know I've mentioned it in the previous session that the consistent global failure rate for executive appointments within the first 18 months is between 40 and 70%.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's global. That's a consistent statistic, and I'm seeing the same problems occurring time and time and time again. So it's one thing for a candidate to make a promise, it's one thing for a company to make a promise, but in terms of from my perspective, when I'm sitting in on interviews, it's essential to know who the real person is, because anybody coming in for a senior appointment, a senior interview, senior level interview, they're going to be practiced, they're going to be polished, they're going to have a wonderful CV or resume, depending on what you call it. And my role is to get behind that image and to uncover who they really are, how they're really going to behave, particularly when things get difficult, as they invariably will at some point, and probably multiple occasions in business, particularly as you're growing. And I have to be able to uncover how they're going to really behave under stress, under pressure, how they really communicate in those scenarios, how clear their thinking is in a stress situation, and how well they will fit the company culture. And unfortunately, a lot of that is not taken into account in too many organizations now.
So, as you were just talking, I thought of your book, Face Facts.
Mhm.
That should be a required reading by every Gen Z.
I would say so. Yes, obviously.
I mean, it's a good business thing, but I mean that where else are they getting that kind of information? Well, they're not. They're learning it, bootstrapping, but there's nobody teaching that. But your book will do that, and perhaps the video that you and I produced about that topic needs to be dusted off and maybe expanded. Have a think about that, and let's discuss that later.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, really, like you and I were we're of that generation where we grew up with what we call people skills. We learned about communication. We learned about having conversations. We learned about things like grit, resilience, dealing with difficulty, dealing with challenging conversations. And unfortunately, again, what I'm both reading and what I'm hearing from so many employers is there are so many young people coming into the workplace now who don't have those communication skills, don't have that grit, and find it difficult to adapt to the challenges when they're, as it were, out of the nest of school and home. So there is a need for those skills to be taught now, and it's both to benefit the individual, but it's certainly to benefit the business as well.
So that is all part of talent development, corporate talent development.
Yeah,
It's like required. That's all there is to it. It doesn't, well, because we've been reading in the Wall Street Journal and other that a lot of companies don't even want to talk to Gen Z because of that. They just don't want to
yeah,
be involved. But the answer is education. Make it a learning organization, and that's a goodwill.
yeah.
That's an excellent employee goodwill tool, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many youngsters are coming on board now, are leaving college, etc., who are technically so capable and have huge intellectual capacity. And if that can be harnessed, that's got to be of such immense value to companies who are enlightened enough to train people properly.
Joseph McGuire, ClearSight Communications. What would you like to leave the audience with? One last thought.
I know I've spoken about it before, Ed, but one of the key things for me in human communication is listening. There's not enough listening going on in the world. We talked again, going back to the idea of the Golden Bridge, and particularly where there's conflict, when we're willing to listen and to hear where the other person is coming from. It doesn't mean we're necessarily going to agree with them. But when people feel heard, and feel heard is the correct term, when people feel heard, they're more willing to engage constructively. It's really as simple as that.
Feeling heard, heard, not heard.
Yeah, heard. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Be back to you soon. I'll send you the
Thank you, Ed.
program later in my day.
Absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye bye. This is Ed in San Diego signing off. Thank you for watching again.